The fourth generation Clio Supermini returned Renault to volume credibility in the small car sector, offering more of the kind of effervescent personality that once made this model line one of Europe's favourites. Tougher segment competition, though, has led to the need for further improvements, principally a significant package of updates which deliver a smarter look and feel and keep this Clio feeling current.
The Renault Clio. It's a definitive expression of this French brand's vast experience in the supermini class, building on the company's reputation for creating compact cars that are characterful, fun to drive and technically accomplished. Qualities go back all the way to the famous Renault 4 and 5 models of old. Here is the latest, much improved, facelifted 4th generation version. It's got quite a legacy behind it, with more than a quarter of a century of production, bringing over 13 million sales in 115 countries. Back in the turn of the century, the Clio was also the first small car to properly prioritise safety, gaining the maximum ratings from Euro NCAP that had previously been reserved for much larger vehicles. Now this has a lot to do with the fact that the Clio remains one of only 2 models ever to gain the coveted European Car of the Year award on 2 occasions. All of this success has been fundamental in keeping Renault afloat in recent times. The last couple of decades have been characterised by a lack of investment in the brand's key models in pursuit of an electrically powered motoring future that the market still isn't quite ready for. And until it is, Renault needs to get its core cars right. No, let's be more specific. It needs to get this Clio right. When the 4th generation version was first announced back in 2012, there were encouraging signs in that regard. It was, we were told by stylist Laurens van den Akker, the car that would make people fall in love with Renault again. And sure enough, it proved a major step forward from its bland, unappealing predecessor. But time moves on. Now, since the original launch, all of this car's contemporaries have either been revised or redesigned in a supermini segment shake-up that sees completely new and very strong contenders from Ford, Nissan and Kia competing for the attention of likely buyers. Now, to keep this Clio competitive, Renault has restyled the front end, smartened up the interior, upgraded the infotainment and added in some fresh powertrain options. Will it all be enough, though, to keep this car current? Let's go and find out. That Renault can engineer a small car with handling to bring a smile to your face has never been in doubt. There are plenty of raughty little Renault Sport Clios around to testify to that. Prior to the original arrival of this Mark IV model back in 2012, though, it had been a long time since we'd seen an ordinary, affordable Clio replicate a properly dynamic driving experience for anyone to enjoy. This 4th generation version manages to do just that, so it's more than just a pretty face. And this is something you establish fairly early on. It helps that you're seated a little lower than the supermini norm and that you punt around a manual gearbox with a slick and satisfying shift. Then there's a steering, though it's still not quite as feelsome as we'd like on this revised model. It now gets a quicker rack, which gives the car a greater sense of agility without also making it feel nervous. So it's easy to place the nose exactly where you want it. If your experience of Clios dates back to the pre-2012 period, then you'll notice a big difference in the way this car drives. And that's something down not only to the factors I've already mentioned, but also due to the 100 kilo weight saving that Renault managed to make with the original version of this design. Throw the thing into a corner and if you're familiar with modern superminis, you might well conclude that it isn't quite as taut as a rival Fiesta, but that's okay. And if you're like us, you instinctively expect French cars to roll a little more, almost want them to, in fact, for the payoff of a supple quality of low-speed ride, which is delivered here in the way that a few rivals can better. Just one of the many reasons that you'd be happy driving this Clio around town. The others include a tight 10.6 metre turning circle and torquey engines that you don't have to row around with a gear lever. There are 5 main engines with low and high-tech routes to petrol power. If price is all, you'll choose the affordable entry-level 1.2 litre 16-valve 75 bhp unit that struggles to 62 miles an hour in 14.5 seconds en route to 104 mph. But before going that route, though, we hope you give a bit of newer technology a chance in the form of Renault's 0.9 litre turbo 3-cylinder TCE unit. Here lies the fun, the joie de vivre that quite a few you people have been long looking for from this car. No, it hasn't got too much to offer if you really rev the thing, but lower down the range where you really want the pulling power in a small car like this, there's plenty thanks to the unobtrusive little turbo, with 90% of the grunt available from little more than tick over. Now that's more than enough to get you to 62 miles an hour in as little as 12.2 seconds on the way to as much as 112 mph. And it's all delivered without the sometimes annoying little thrum that occasionally blights rival three-cylinder engines from Ford and Peugeot. If you do need a little more petrol poke, there's a 1.2 litre turbo 4-cylinder TCE 120 engine option, and that's now available with a manual gearbox, and it's therefore a unit that's likely to get a much wider take-up this time around. Courtesy of a much greater 250 Nm slug of pulling power, this TCE unit is certainly significantly quicker than its smaller stablemate, making 62 in 9 seconds en route to 124 miles an hour. As before, it can be ordered with an EDC efficient dual clutch automatic gearbox 2, and that will suit older or more urban-based folk. Here though, we're trying the 1.5 litre DCI diesel, a unit that most people will order in 90 bhp form, where it continues to offer a decent blend of performance and parsimony. 220 Nm of torque, propelling the car to 62 miles an hour in 12 seconds en route to 112 miles an hour. Opt for the extra cost EDC auto gearbox, and those figures fall to 12.9 seconds and 109 miles an hour. An extra 62 kilos of weight in the nose means that a Clio DCI doesn't feel quite as agile as a Clio TCE, but with nearly 70% more pulling power, the diesel model is possibly a better choice if your super mini motoring has to include plenty of out-of-town work. It's certainly a little more responsive at higher speeds, say when you're on a motorway and you hit a steep incline. I should mention that in this case, the Clio diesel derivative that I'm testing uses the 1.5 litre DCI engine in pokier 110 bhp form. This particular manual-only variant is a fresh addition to the revised range. Thanks to another 40 Nm of torque, the benchmark performance figures here improved to 11.2 seconds and 121 miles an hour. As before, at the top of the lineup lie the Renault Sport hot hatch models, powered also as before by a 1.6 litre petrol turbo that develops 200 bhp in the standard version and 220 bhp in the more track-focused trophy model. The track stats are pretty similar either way, 62 miles an hour from rest taking just under 7 seconds en route to a top speed in the region of 145 mph. Unfortunately, another thing that hasn't changed is the fact you can only order those performance variants with EDC paddle shift auto transmission. Get beyond that though, and you'll find that the French brand's Dieppe division really still has what it takes to create a really great handling little shopping rocket. Renault likes to see this fourth generation Clio as a standard bearer for the recent renaissance in its approach to vehicle design. There is some truth to that, because since it was introduced following inspiration from the company's futuristic Desire concept car, the brand has moved away from the kind of dull, forgettable design that was exemplified by this Supermini's pre-2012 Mark III model predecessor. The longer, wider, lower look just worked, but it needed a bit of refreshment. Hence the revised front end of this facelifted version, which features a grille that's been redesigned to make its prominent Renault badge even more prominent. From here, colour customisable trim strips flow out into these restyled headlamps that on plusher models like this one incorporate smart C-shaped LED daytime running light strips, while the main beams feature pure vision full LED technology. Move to the side and you better appreciate a profile that's actually quite voluptuous by Supermini standards, with curving panels that gather pace around the steeply raked windscreen, culminating with assertive shoulder lines above the front and rear wheel arches. There's no 3-door model, so it's just as well that this 5-door does a good impression of one. Coupe-like styling emphasised by hidden rear door handles. The idea is that visually and practically you get the best of both worlds. Now the curvy creativity continues at the rear too, where these tail lights have been restyled, and on plusher versions they feature a jewel-like LED lit nighttime illuminating signature. It'd be nice to report that what's lying underneath all of this is the kind of sophisticated high-tech platform that rivals either feature or are working on. But unfortunately, that is not the case. For all the aesthetic sophistication, this fourth generation model continues to run on the underpinnings of a Mark III Clio model that dates all the way back to 2005. Not that many likely buyers will care. And at the wheel, well, we're told it's supposed to be modern, welcoming and occupant friendly. Well, it's certainly modern, with shiny, jazzy cabin finishes that grab your attention and refuse to let it go, especially if you're in a car that's benefited from or been afflicted by the wide array of trim personalisation that's apparently possible. This example is pretty restrained, but it's possible to go quite wild here, say in a red Clio, complete with the red dashboard, red door panel inserts and red stitching on black cloth seats. Quite. If you happen to be familiar with the original version of this fourth generation model, then you might well notice the improvement in cabin quality that's been brought about by a package of little changes, like smarter seat fabric, redesigned gear lever, and the matte finish that's been applied to the interior chrome detailing. There's a restyled three-spoke steering wheel too, which has discarded some of its plastic components in pursuit of a more upmarket look. Otherwise, things are much as before, so through that wheel you view a confident chrome-surrounded instrument cluster that's dominated by the kind of digital speeder that not everyone will like. Equally eye-catching is the consumer electronics fest that dominates the gloss black trimmed centre console on all but the base models in the form of a tablet-like 7-inch colour infotainment touchscreen display. Now this comes in two forms: the media nav package you get on mid-range variants and the more sophisticated optional R-Link setup that we're trying here. Now, either way, what's on offer is a lot more advanced than the infotainment packages offered by most supermini rivals. The R-Link setup includes voice recognition, internet and email access, text-to-speak messaging, and also the opportunity to download a wide range of Renault-sourced apps. Dislikes? Well, if you can get on with the modern feel, there really aren't many. The rear windows are a little small. Their glass area has been reduced with this design in pursuit of a sporty look, so it can be tricky to see over your shoulder when you're parking or at junctions. We want to tick the box for rear parking sensors. It's also a bit surprising to find that the cruise control switch isn't operated in its usual place off the wheel, but down here by the handbrake. Still, at least behind the wheel, all models do get this neat control stalk for the decent quality stereo systems that Renault offers with their punchy bass reflex speakers. Not as ergonomic is the placement of this start button. There's no key needed, and it's a reach away from the driver on the left-hand side of the centre stack. Lazily, it hasn't been moved across to suit the needs of right-hand drive customers. Still, all markets will appreciate the practicality of this cabin, with lots of well thought out stowage spaces dotted around. The tray in front of the gear lever that's exactly the right size to hold your phone or your music player. The 4-litre glove box, the armrest between the seats that doubles up as a storage compartment, and door bins that can carry a 1.5-litre bottle. So pass the Perrier. Take a seat in the rear. Now this is one of the longer superminis in the class, but you really wouldn't know it from a seat here. Space for knees and legs being at something of a premium. There is a little more headroom you might expect though, given this fourth generation model's lowered roofline, although taller adults may still find their heads brushing the ceiling. Now the bench back here can take 3, but as with all superminis, the trio in question need to be of school age if distances are to be covered in any kind of real comfort. Out back there's a 300-litre boot that's about 15 to 20 litres bigger than the trunk space delivered by most obvious rivals. If you push forward the 60/40 split folding rear backrest, you can extend that to 1,146 litres. Again, one of the better figures in the class, though it's a pity that the area provided isn't quite flat and there's quite a large step in the extended floor that could make it difficult to slide in heavier, larger items. Our cousins across the channel can get more room than this by opting for a stylish Sport Tourer estate body style, which unfortunately we won't get here because Renault UK thinks it'll clash with their compact Capture crossover model. For most customers, this improved 4th generation Clio will cost somewhere in the £12,000 to £18,500 bracket that's typical for Fiesta-sized superminis. As before, it's a 5-door only body style, provided this time around with a choice of 5 mainstream engines. Now, ideally, you'll want to avoid the old tech entry-level 1.2 litre 75 bhp petrol unit. Even Dacia has discarded that. Instead, if budget permits, try to limit your search to the 2 TCE petrol units, priced from around £14,000, or the 2 1.5 litre DCI diesel power plants, priced from around £15,500. At the top of the range, a 1.6 litre petrol turbo unit is reserved for the Renault Sport Clio hot hatch model, and that's priced from around £20,000. Here, we're going to focus on the 4 mainstream engines. Now, go for the base petrol and diesel variants and you'll be offered the opportunity of spending a further £250 on an optional eco pack that adds low rolling resistance tyres, a weight-saving thermoplastic tailgate and tweaks to the torque and throttle performance, all of which makes quite a significant difference to running cost returns. If you'd like a little more power from your petrol Clio and you're happy to avoid entry-level trim, then there's a £650 premium to go from the 0.9 litre 3-cylinder TCE 90 variant to a more satisfying 1.2 litre 4-cylinder TCE 120 derivative that's now available with manual transmission. As for diesel, well, almost all Clio buyers wanting that will choose the DCI 90 unit, as that's available across all the trim levels. The top DCI 110 engine we're trying here is only available with the plushest trim level, and that makes it quite a pricey choice. On to the value proposition this kind of pricing represents. Now, you need to make sure at this point that you're comparing to rivals in 5-door form. Most competitors offer either 3 or 5-door body styles. Now, at the foot of the range, if you really must have the entry-level 1.2 litre 75 bhp engine, then you'll find plenty of other popular superminis with unsatisfying entry-level petrol engines at the £12,000 price point. Cars like Vauxhall's Corsa, Seat's Ibiza or Volkswagen's Polo. Around £1,000 less would get you into base petrol variants of cars like Citroën C3, Skoda's Fabia, Hyundai's i20 or Kia's Rio. You'd probably need between £500 to £1,000 more, though, for a base petrol version of, say, a Peugeot 208, Mazda 2, Toyota Yaris or a Ford Fiesta. But let's assume you're looking at this Clio with one of the more sophisticated engines that we would recommend. Frugal yet pokey 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engines developing 90 to 100 PS are all the rage in the supermini segment at present. The one in the Clio TCE 90 will cost you about the same as the unit of the same kind that you'd find in, say, a Vauxhall Corsa or a Kia Rio, but it'd save you about £1,000 on the 1 litre turbo power plants that you'd find in cars like Ford's Fiesta, Hyundai's i20 and Volkswagen's Polo. When it comes to diesel, bear in mind that the Clio's base diesel DCI 90 unit offers a bit more power than you get from the entry-level diesel versions of some other contenders in this sector, which is why that variant's price starting point, around £15,500, looks a little higher than some competitors. We think, though, that this 1.5 litre Renault unit offers a good blend of performance and parsimony, and if you pitch it against comparably performing rivals, you'll find that it's priced fractionally above equivalent versions of cars like Vauxhall's Corsa and Seat's Ibiza, but a little below equivalent black pump fueled variants of superminis like Ford's Fiesta and Volkswagen's Polo. Enough with the comparisons. Let's say you've examined all the supermini alternatives, but you still like the look of this Clio and you've got a prospect of a good financial offer from your local dealer. Now, that really is a question of how complete the equipment levels might be. So let's take a look at that. Now, there's an expression-trimmed price-leading model that only comes with the base 1.2 litre 75 bhp petrol engine, but even that comes with features like LED daytime running lights, driver's seat height adjustment, cruise control with a speed limiter, a trip computer, and a reasonable quality audio system with a DAB radio and punchy Renault bass reflex speakers, plus steering wheel mounted remote controls and a USB socket. There is Bluetooth phone connectivity too, and you get a freely downloadable R&Go app that offers a simple way of instantly connecting up your smartphone. You even get a mount for it on the dash. For the vast majority of likely Clio buyers, though, the range starting point will be with Play spec, and that's a trim level that adds to that tally with 16-inch alloy wheels, front fog lights and air conditioning. Your dealer, of course, will want you to go further than that, and actually you won't get much perspective on the media connectivity improvements made to this revised model unless you buy in at least at dynamic nav level. Here, the cabin gets the sophistication of the revised media nav multimedia setup with a 7-inch colour touchscreen that gives you access to route guidance and an upgraded audio system. Other features that come with dynamic nav spec include a leather steering wheel, powered heated mirrors, various interior and exterior trim embellishments, and auto headlamps and wipers. At the top of the range lies Dynamic S Nav. That's the trim level we're trying here, with its part leather seat trim, larger, stylish black 17-inch wheels, LED front and rear lamps, rear parking sensors, climate control, power folding mirrors, and rear electric windows. Even at this level, though, you have to pay extra for a spare wheel, and that's something you can't order at all on Renault Sport models. On to options. Now, aside from the aesthetic stuff and that important spare wheel, there's almost nothing you're allowed to pay extra for on the base Expression and Play variants, and very little on the volume dynamic nav model, apart from rear parking sensors, a panoramic glass roof, LED headlamps, and rear tinted glass. Going for this car's Dynamic S nav trim level, though, gives you a few more choices. At this point of the range, then you might like the idea of 18-inch silver Renault Sport wheels and cool LED interior lighting. Plus, this car has an optional so-called interior touch pack that really brightens up the cabin. You can also colour coordinate the dashboard with the door trims and the seats if you really want to. Now, talking of optional packs, by and large, you have to have Dynamic S nav trim in order to be offered them. Probably the key thing you'll want is the Renault R-Link multimedia system, which allows you to get the very most from the cabin's 7-inch media nav screen. R-Link is included as part of a range of techno packs that can be ordered either with or without a Bose premium sound system and a clever hands-free parking setup that can steer you into spaces. All the techno packs include all-round parking sensors and a better quality stereo, plus the upgraded R-Link enabled screen also includes a reversing camera, an eco driving menu, and access to the Renault R-Link store for viewing or downloading specialist apps covering everything from tweeting to games. Now, we would go for the R Sound Effect app, which can simulate up to 6 different engine sound profiles, which are then synchronized with live speed and acceleration, so you can match your Clio's sound to the mood you're in. Brilliant. We mentioned aesthetic options. Well, provided you opt for one of the dynamic spec models, there's quite a lot to choose from. An exterior touch pack gives you red or ivory trim inserts for the front grille, the side sills and the rear hatch, and you can get the roof finished in a contrasting colour, ivory, mercury, diamond black or flame red. For a sporty feel, a GT line look pack adds side skirts, a rear diffuser, a chromed exhaust and special GT alloy wheels. Other accessories are practical items that you'll be able to fit across the range. These are things like roof bars, a roof box, a boot liner, a vertical boot net and an alarm. On to safety. Now, since this has always been a Clio strong point, we expected that Renault would follow the lead set by some rivals in this segment and start to offer on this car some of the more sophisticated radar-driven devices that are now becoming familiar to buyers. Things like lane departure warning and autonomous braking. Now, it seems that the inherent age of this design has prevented that because there's nothing of that sort available, even on the options list. Still, the basic Clio package does remain pretty sound in that regard. Indeed, back at the original launch in 2012, this car was judged the safest supermini on the market by Euro NCAP. Today, all models get twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus ISOFIX child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, a pedestrian-friendly bonnet and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. Plus, there are, of course, anti-lock brakes with emergency brake assist for sudden stops, and those will be immediately advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning flashes. Now, that is all enough to enable Renault to continue to claim a 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating, although that score was delivered before the introduction of the newer, more stringent version of the organisation's testing programme. When it comes to cost of ownership, it obviously helps that this Clio is one of the lighter superminis in the sector. Most variants tipping the scales at not much more than a tonne. To give you some perspective, that makes it around 200 kilos lighter than a volume rival like Vauxhall's Corsa. And that is a weight saving broadly equivalent to the one you'd be likely to make if you asked an adult and 2 of your children to get out and walk. All of this is possible thanks to the across-the-board weight saving of around 100 kilos that this 4th generation model enjoys over its pre-2012 3rd generation predecessor. That's all very impressive, but it's not efficiency you're likely to notice very much at the wheel of a Clio in base 1.2 litre 16 valve and 75 bhp petrol form. To be fair, this entry-level unit has been improved in recent years, so the combined cycle fuel consumption can break through the 50 miles per gallon mark. It's now 50.4 mpg, and the CO2 return, 127 grams per kilometre, is now less embarrassing for a car of this size, but it's still way off what we now expect from a modern supermini. Part of the reason why is that this older power plant can't be ordered with the stop and start system that's standard on all the other models in the range, cutting the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. If, as we would suggest, you ignore this old tech unit, you might well find it a touch irritating that to get the best returns from the base TCE petrol and DCI diesel variants, you have to pay Renault 250 quid more for an eco package, which adds low rolling resistance tyres, a weight-saving thermoplastic tailgate, and tweaks to the torque and throttle performance that makes a difference of about 5% to the fuel and CO2 figures, particularly in the case of the 0.9 litre TCE, where the eco tweaks bring CO2 levels beyond the magic 100 grams per kilometre figure to a road tax-free 94 grams per kilometre. Combined cycle fuel consumption, meanwhile, will see a 0.9 litre TCE Eco variant return an impressive 67.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle. Now those are very competitive stats for a car in this segment. As for the DCI 90 diesel Clio variant, well, that is already pretty frugal. Big steps forward in efficiency with this variant having been made when the 4th generation Clio model range was originally launched. As a result, with the optional eco tweaks, you can expect to achieve 88.3 mpg on the combined cycle and put out just 82 grams per kilometre of CO2, and that is better than some hybrids can manage, and again, it's enough to keep this variant near the forefront of its class. Opt for the pokier DCI 110 variant that we're trying here, and the penalty isn't actually too great. Here you're looking at 80.7 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 90 grams per kilometre of CO2. Whatever your choice of mainstream engine, if you buy a model further up the range, you'll be offered some help in maximising its returns. With the dynamic trimmed variants, there's a dash-mounted Eco Mode button that reduces the engine torque and modifies the throttle response to optimise efficiency. Now, Renault reckons that this can improve your returns by up to 12%. As a visual reminder towards frugality, there's also a driving style indicator in the instrument display, which moves through green, yellow and orange zones and includes a gear shift indicator, all with the object of helping you to develop a more efficient driving style. If you get yourself a TCE or DCI derivative that's fitted with the optional R-Link infotainment system, that setup's centre dash screen also offers up an eco driving menu. Now this offers a whole range of options based around a couple of tuition segments that'll help to improve your driving efficiency. Those tuition segments are standard and advanced. In standard, you get an overall global score for all your efficiency related areas of driving, plus a score evolution graph that shows your recent progress in that regard. The car also records the distance travelled without fuel consumption, although actually I'm not quite sure why you'd need to know that. Anyway, in the advanced section it's all a little bit simpler with straightforward star scorings for your efforts in terms of acceleration, gear changing and anticipation. Both sections give you the option to access some so-called eco coaching tips. Check tyre pressures every 3 months, for example, or open the windows rather than using the air conditioning system when you're driving around town. Yes, it is all a bit like being back at school. Negatives? Well, there's not much to carp about here, but one slight annoyance is one we did mention when this 4th generation model was originally launched, namely the relatively small 45-litre fuel tank, which offers 10 litres less capacity than it did on the pre-2012 Mark III model. Renault points out that improved economy leaves the driving range as being very similar to that of the old car, but of course it could have been significantly better. What else? Depreciation levels. Well, they'll be very similar to those of other mainstream brand superminis in the segment, and service intervals are every year or every 12,500 miles, whichever comes first. And you can plan ahead for costs in this regard by opting at point of purchase for a prepaid servicing plan that covers you for either 3 years and 30,000 miles or 4 years and 40,000 miles. If you choose a TCE 90 unit, it'll also help. This power plant features a timing chain that's designed to last the life of the engine. The 4-year 4+ warranty looks good too, given that most rivals restrict you to 3 years of cover. This package includes roadside assistance for the duration, although bear in mind that the final 2 years of the policy will be invalidated in the unlikely event that your Clio covers more than 100,000 miles. And that only leaves insurance. We'll start with the petrol models, where ratings start at Group 3E or 4E for the 1.2 litre 75 bhp model. For the TCE 90, they're rated at 7E for the standard model, but that falls to 6E if you get it fitted with the Eco Pack. That'll help justify that option's extra cost, of course. For the TCE 120 variant, you're looking at Group 14E. On to diesel power. For the DCI 90, you're looking at Group 10E, while for this DCI 110 derivative, it's Group 12E. Finally, the hot hatch Clio Renault Sport 200 is up at Group 27E, while the 220 trophy version is rated at Group 28E. As Renault boss Carlos Ghosn pointed out at this 4th generation model's original launch, there's nothing wrong with any car company that good cars won't fix. Well, this Clio remains a good car, with a more appealing look and feel than most of its supermini contemporaries. And dynamics, the fun chuckability that used to exemplify small Renaults. Well, yeah, you get that too, balanced with the comfort that's also a Gallic trademark. In terms of the exact balance between the two, it'll depend a little on your choice between the two most preferable mainstream engines. Go for the light and agile TCE petrol variants, and there's extra fun and character. Opt for this DCI diesel and you get a more mature and sensible performer. So, choose to suit. As for the changes made to this revised model, well, of course, they're welcome. Although they don't make an enormous difference to the overall package, they do add an extra feeling of quality to it. And that's something that'll be important in keeping this Renault competitive against a pack of new generation rivals. No small car is perfect, of course, and this one isn't. You might feel a Volkswagen Polo's more solid or a Ford Fiesta's a little sharper to drive. And you might be right, but as a very accomplished all-rounder, this Clio continues to merit a significant place on any serious supermini buyer's shortlist.